Have you ever wondered what happens on the International Space Station that we're not allowed to see? I'm not talking about conspiracy theories with aliens waving at astronauts. I'm talking about something much quieter, much older, and much harder to explain. Something the official footage will never show you. Not because it was lost, but because it was buried. There are parts of space you don't come back from. And sometimes, they're not even measured in light years. Sometimes they're just a few meters outside a camera's frame. In 2015, during a routine mission aboard the ISS, an American astronaut made a mistake. He hit the wrong sequence during a diagnostics check. And something activated. Something off the books. A channel that shouldn't have been there. A feed that wasn't labeled. And what he saw on that screen? It changed everything. This isn't fiction. This isn't fantasy. What I'm about to share with you comes from a dying man, a former NASA systems engineer whose security clearance went deeper than most people knew even existed. He didn't care about fame. He didn't care if you believed him. He had months to live, and one final thing he needed to say. He told me there's a system on board the ISS called Black Channel. Officially, it was decommissioned after the Cold War. Unofficially, it never stopped transmitting. It was a failsafe, a paranoia-fueled relic from a time when the US and Soviet Union believed something else might be watching from orbit. Not satellites, not space junk, not human. And according to him, that something was found. He walked me through everything. The logs, the protocol, the video feed, the creature. He said it wasn't like a monster from the movies. There were no claws, no dripping fangs, just something shaped like us. But wrong. Its skin looked stretched, bruised and folded, like it had been vacuum sealed by the cosmos itself. And worst of all were the eyes. Not milky, not dead, alive, tracking, reacting, as if it knew it was being watched. And it didn't like that. The astronaut who uncovered it declared dead days later. Suit breach, walked out, never came back. But the engineer swears there was no EVA scheduled for that day. No logs, no record of the airlock cycling. Nothing but a silent reclassification and a funeral no one could explain. And the footage? Gone. Except for one fragment. One encrypted copy. He kept it, buried on a cold storage drive. And when he opened it years later, in a quiet apartment filled with pill bottles and radiation scars, he swore the creature looked older, sicker, but still there, still regenerating, still waiting. And then, it looked straight at him. He said he slammed the laptop shut and never opened it again. But that night, his doorbell rang. No one was there, just a crackling hum like a detuned radio bleeding through the air. He never touched that drive again. But the nightmares started anyway, and now he's gone. What he left behind is what I'm about to show you. Before we dive deeper into this story, I want to take a moment and ask you something. If you've ever felt that eerie chill when thinking about what might be lurking just beyond our sight, especially out there in the cold vastness of space, go ahead and hit that like button. It really helps more people discover stories like this one, hidden truths that most will never hear about. And while you're here, tell me in the comments, have you ever sensed something watching you, something just out of reach or beyond explanation? I want to know. Your stories, your experiences, they make this community stronger and remind us that these mysteries affect more people than we realize. If you want to keep uncovering secrets like this, stories that pull back the curtain on government cover-ups, space conspiracies, and cosmic horrors, make sure to subscribe. Because there's a lot more to this, and I'll be sharing every chilling detail with you. All right. Now that we've set the stage, the truth is ready to come out. Let's start from the beginning, with the man who should never have told us what he saw. I remember the day I first decided I had to tell someone the truth. It wasn't an easy decision. I was an engineer at NASA for decades, working on some of the most sensitive projects you could imagine. But now, with the cancer eating away at me and knowing my time is short, I can't keep it bottled up any longer. There's something buried out there, beyond the public's gaze. And it's not aliens you should fear. No, it's something far more dangerous. Something we deliberately hid on the International Space Station. My voice trembles just saying it, but it's the truth I carry. I wasn't supposed to know what I saw, let alone survive long enough to talk about it. And yet, here I am. You need to hear this. They say the ISS is the pinnacle of human achievement, a floating laboratory orbiting Earth, a symbol of cooperation and exploration. But what they don't tell you is that it's also a cage, a place of extreme isolation where every move is monitored, every second accounted for, and every secret carefully buried. What I'm about to reveal happened inside that very station, beyond the walls you see in official photos, beyond the corridors mapped for public viewing. There's a hidden layer to the ISS, a shadow network known only to a few, and within it, something survived. Something alive, but not human. You might think space is cold, silent, empty. But on the ISS, there's a constant hum, a vibration beneath the surface that no one talks about. When I was still on the team, I was part of a classified project. It was designed during the Cold War, at the height of paranoia, to detect anything unusual in orbit. They called it the Black Channel. Officially, it was shut down decades ago, but in reality, it never went dark. It was a failsafe, a hidden frequency designed to keep tabs on something the government refused to name. In 2015, during Expedition 43, an astronaut, let's call him MJ, accidentally activated this channel. A simple mistake sent encrypted data not to the public network, but directly into NASA's internal servers. For just a few minutes, the veil lifted, and what MJ saw on those screens shocked everyone who eventually glimpsed the footage. There was a room inside the station, a narrow, windowless chamber wedged between modules that didn't appear on any official schematics. The lighting was dim, the air stale, but that wasn't the worst part. Inside that hidden room was a body, pressed against the cold metal wall. It wasn't wrapped in a spacesuit. No helmet, no life support, just flesh and bone. The creature's skin was wrinkled, almost translucent, like a corpse left too long in the vacuum of space. But the eyes, those eyes were alive, wide open, tracking the cameras, as if aware it was being watched. It moved slightly, twitching in a way that suggested pain, but also consciousness. It was impossible, and yet there it was. The footage went on for hours. Over 4 long hours, that creature writhed and decayed in an endless loop. It seemed to die and then come back to life, like a cosmic glitch in the fabric of biology. The only sound was a low-frequency whisper, barely audible, but enough to make your skin crawl. It was like the station itself was whispering secrets no one should hear. After the incident, the footage was erased. The mission was abruptly classified. MJ was declared dead due to a spacesuit failure during a spacewalk, even though, according to logs, he never left the station that day. The official story made no sense, but no one dared question it. And the creature? Erased from history. I managed to see that footage before it vanished. What I saw stayed with me every night. The endless suffering, the impossible existence of something pre-human, trapped and forgotten. I can't explain how it survived without oxygen, how its eyes followed the camera so intently. It was as if it knew it was a prisoner, waiting for something beyond our understanding. This isn't just a story about space or government secrets. It's a tale about isolation, surveillance, and the terrible things we bury when we're too afraid to confront the unknown. The ISS might be a marvel of science, but it's also a vault for horrors we don't want to face. And there's so much more. We're just getting started. You might be wondering how something like this could have stayed hidden for so long. That's where the Black Channel Protocol comes in, the darkest secret buried within the ISS's sprawling network. This wasn't just another security feature or a backup communication line. No, it was a covert frequency embedded deep in the station's systems, a secret channel created back in the Cold War era, when fear of unknown phenomena in orbit was at its peak. The government, gripped by paranoia, feared that not all signals picked up in space were human-made. Something else might have been lurking out there, something that defied explanation or control. So, they built the Black Channel to monitor these anomalies quietly, without raising alarms or public attention. Officially, the protocol was shut down decades ago, but according to what I know, what I was part of, it never truly went dark. The idea of a hidden frequency running beneath the station's official networks might sound like sci-fi, but trust me, it's as real as the air we breathe. This channel wasn't designed for astronauts to talk to each other or for mission control to send commands. It was a secret listening post, tuned to catch signals and images that the rest of us weren't meant to see. For years, it operated in the shadows, a silent witness to things no one would admit. And here's where it gets chilling. The Black Channel wasn't just monitoring space, it was monitoring something inside the ISS itself, something they desperately wanted to keep hidden. I remember the first time I heard about the Black Channel while still working in the project. It came as a rumor at first, whispered during late-night shifts, when most of the crew was asleep and the station seemed quieter than usual. But those whispers turned into real data, real code in the system, hidden away behind layers of encryption. The channel was designed to pick up anything unusual, whether it was a strange signal from space or a part of the station that wasn't supposed to be there. The idea was to keep it classified to avoid panic, to maintain control over what information would reach the public. The powers that be decided that some truths were too dangerous, too destabilizing. They called it a protocol, but it was really a lock, one designed to keep us blind to what was orbiting just above our heads. I was part of the team tasked with maintaining parts of the station's network, but the Black Channel was always off limits. Even within NASA, few knew about it, and fewer still understood its purpose. It was like a ghost in the system, a secret so deeply embedded that even some of the astronauts weren't aware of it. But from what I was told, and from what I witnessed, it was still active long after the Cold War ended, quietly running in the background, waiting. If such a protocol existed, then what else was hidden? What other doors have they locked? What other frequencies and signals remain buried deep in the station's core? The thought alone chills me. Governments have always controlled information tightly, especially when it touches on the unknown or the unexplained. The ISS, while a symbol of exploration, has also become a vault for secrets we're not ready to face. The Black Channel is proof that there are things orbiting above us, both physically and metaphorically, that we can barely begin to comprehend. This secret line set the stage for what came next. The glitch, the accident that broke the silence, revealing glimpses of what they tried so hard to erase. But before we get there, you have to understand that the Black Channel wasn't just a tool. It was a reminder that the universe and our place in it is far more complex and terrifying than we're told. It's a bridge between what's known and what's deliberately obscured. And once you start looking through that lens, you can't unsee what's waiting on the other side. Stay with me. There's more to uncover. In April 2015, during Expedition 43, something happened that shook the very foundations of what we thought we knew about the International Space Station. It was no ordinary day for the crew. Yet behind the scenes, a critical error unfolded, one that would almost cost an astronaut his life and expose a secret the world was never meant to see. The astronaut, known only by the codename MJ for security reasons, was working on routine tasks when he accidentally triggered a transmission that should have remained hidden forever. Instead of sending encrypted data to the official NASA channels, MJ mistakenly transmitted an unencrypted package directly to NASA's internal intranet, a private network shielded from public eyes. This slip-up sent a ripple through the secret corridors of power, because what was inside that data was unlike anything anyone expected. Only one small technical control room saw the transmission before the system was immediately shut down. The protocols for these kinds of breaches are brutal. The data was erased, all traces scrubbed, and the incident swept under the rug as if it had never happened. But not before a few people like me, caught a glimpse of what the hidden feed contained. It was raw, unfiltered, and horrifying. MJ was never officially blamed for the leak. Instead, the story spun was that he died during a spacewalk due to a catastrophic suit failure. The public was told this version, and most accepted it without question. But the logs tell a different story. MJ never left the station that day. He was inside, working, and something in those data packets proved why. That glitch, that transmission mistake, cracked open a door that was meant to stay locked forever. Suddenly, a hidden layer within the ISS was exposed, a secret surveillance network of cameras placed where no official blueprints show. These cameras captured images from a narrow, windowless room sandwiched between the modules, a place that didn't exist on any publicly available map. The video showed no human presence in the room, just a dim, flickering light, cold metallic walls, and then the impossible, a creature trapped inside. It was like the station was hiding a ghost, something that should not have survived the vacuum of space. This wasn't the work of a hallucination or a fabrication. The footage was real. The silence on that channel was deafening, broken only by the mechanical hum of life support systems failing and reviving in a grotesque cycle. MJ was horrified by what he saw, and the data packet he sent was an unconscious SOS, a desperate leak from within the station itself. The glitch was more than a technical failure. It was the unraveling of a tightly controlled secret, a secret so immense it threatened the very narrative of human exploration. What the world calls science and progress was shadowed by fear, by silence, and by something lurking inside the heart of the ISS. Imagine being alone in space, knowing that behind one of those cold steel walls is a living nightmare, something ancient, something pre-human, watching, waiting, suffering in an endless loop. MJ's accidental broadcast was a cry for help, a glimpse into a hidden truth so terrifying that the powers above scrambled to erase every trace of it. But for those who saw, that glitch was a doorway. It opened a window into a conspiracy built on silence and fear. And the question remains, what was really in that data? What other truths lie buried in the shadows of our greatest achievements? The glitch didn't just reveal a secret. It shattered the illusion that we control what happens in orbit. There's so much more beneath the surface, things kept in the dark because the truth is more dangerous than fiction. We're just beginning to peel back the layers. The man on the recording paused for a long time before speaking again. You could hear the shallow, strained rasp of his breathing. When he finally continued, there was something different in his voice. Something almost childlike. Not fear exactly, but a trembling sense of awe. Like he'd witnessed something that broke him in half, and he still hadn't put the pieces back together. He said the file arrived at 02:47 a.m. Houston time, tagged incorrectly, routed through a backdoor protocol that hadn't been touched in decades. It bypassed encryption, he said. It shouldn't have even been possible. The tech team assumed it was corrupted telemetry at first. Static, garbled visuals, a bad feed from an external camera maybe. But when they scrubbed through the raw frames, someone noticed something that didn't make sense. The camera designation, BCC-0019, didn't match any listed system on the current ISS blueprint. It wasn't on the module manifest. It wasn't even in the archived logs of decommissioned systems. As far as NASA was concerned, That camera didn't exist, and yet, there it was, streaming footage in real time. The video began with the interior of a narrow, dimly lit corridor. The walls were the same industrial metal used across most of the ISS, but the architecture was off. Slightly asymmetrical, not built with the same design conventions. It looked cramped, almost like a forgotten crawl space between modules, but it extended further than any maintenance duct should. There was no visible door, no hatch, just a long, claustrophobic hallway that shouldn't have been there. At first, there was nothing unusual, no movement, just low ambient lighting and the distant hum of station systems. But after about 30 seconds, a section of the wall in the background shifted. Not mechanically, like a sliding door or a panel, but slowly, organically, as if the metal itself was breathing. And then, it appeared. A shape, not walking in, not crawling. It was already there, blended into the structure somehow. A silhouette that slowly separated itself from the wall, peeling forward inch by inch until it hung upright, weightless, suspended in zero gravity. The body was humanoid, or close enough to trigger something instinctive in the brain. 2 arms, 2 legs, a head. But it was all wrong. Elongated, emaciated. Its limbs too thin, its skin grayish blue, stretched tight like old leather across a skeletal frame. The face, if you could call it that, was slack, lips cracked, eyes closed. But even in that frozen state, there was something deeply disturbing, something ancient. And then the eyes opened, not suddenly, no jolt or twitch, just a slow, deliberate lift of the lids, as if it had been waiting, watching. The pupils were pinpoints, jet black, reflecting nothing, like they weren't meant to take in light, but something else entirely. And the moment they opened, the camera feed shimmered. The static returned, but this time it wasn't noise. It was a pulse, timed perfectly with the opening of those eyes. "I swear to God," the narrator said. Those eyes looked directly into the lens, into the camera, and then softer, into us. The shadows danced unnaturally, stretched at the wrong angles, like the light source was moving inside the camera rather than outside. And when the picture stabilized, the figure had shifted. It was closer, not by much, just a few feet, but there had been no movement, no visible transition, no sound, no jump in the feed, just closer. The text assumed it was a glitch, maybe a splice in the frame order. But the narrator insisted it wasn't. He had scrubbed every frame. There was no discontinuity, no edit. The thing had simply become nearer. He froze the footage and zoomed in, and that's when he saw it. The wall behind the creature had changed. Where there had once been smooth metal paneling, there was now damage, long, deep scratches etched into the surface. But they weren't random. They looked deliberate, symmetrical, like symbols, glyphs. Something scratched from the inside. He remembered pausing the video and just staring, not because of what he was seeing, but because of what he was feeling. He said it felt like something had recognized him. That sounds impossible, I know, irrational. But in that moment, with the creature's eyes staring directly through the feed, through the data pipeline, through the firewall, through the monitor, he felt observed, not watched, observed, measured. Not just his face, but something deeper, and he couldn't shake it. When they tried to trace the signal's source, they found nothing. No data tags, no authentication trail. Just raw video routed directly into an obsolete internal server, one that hadn't been powered on in years. And then, suddenly, the feed stopped. Not like someone pulled the plug. There was no cutoff, no disconnect, just an abrupt freeze frame. The creature, half floating toward the camera, mid-drift. The timestamp stuck at 04:23:14, and after that, Nothing. No metadata, no file. Everything vanished. But the narrator said he had saved a copy, illegally. A mirror made seconds before the network went dark. He never showed the video to anyone, not even his family, but he watched it again. Once, only once. And the second time, something was different. He swore the thing moved faster, that the eyes opened sooner, that the scratches on the wall were in a new pattern. And most terrifying of all, that the camera's viewpoint had shifted, just slightly, a change in angle, as if it had been lifted or held. He believed, no, he knew, that the creature had become aware of being seen. And somehow, it was responding. If you've made it this far, you already know this isn't just another conspiracy theory or ghost story from orbit. This is something else, something darker, something that calls to you the moment you give it attention. If you've ever felt like a camera was watching more than just your face, like it was reading the part of you that thinks in silence. Comment, it saw me too. The eyes were moving, intentionally, deliberately, tracking the lens of the hidden ISS camera like a predator that had just discovered it was being watched. He described the eyes with a tremor in his voice that no amount of time had softened. They weren't cloudy or glazed like you'd expect from a decomposed figure. They were vivid, wet. Vivid in a way that didn't make sense. Not in space, not in a compartment without oxygen. They shimmered in that dull light like they belonged to something still alive. And worse, something aware. The footage, he explained, had no accompanying sound aside from the ambient hiss of internal cabin pressure, except that there shouldn't have been any pressure in that part of the station. The module wasn't listed on any schematics. According to official ISS architecture, it didn't exist. That compartment should have been vacuum, but here was a video showing a humanoid figure lodged against the wall, unrestrained by suits, helmets, or life support systems, skin desiccated, grayish and cracked like something long dead. But those eyes. He kept coming back to the eyes, not just alive, intelligent. He took a shaky breath. They moved, not randomly. They looked directly at me. He clarified, not at the camera, but at him, as if the footage contained some awareness of who was viewing it. He remembered feeling a sudden spike in his chest, a visceral jolt of panic that went beyond logical fear. Not because of what the eyes did, but what they implied. Observation, recognition, intent. He tried to brush it off as coincidence. Maybe he was projecting. Maybe the mind sees patterns where there are none. But then he replayed the video, slowed it down, frame by frame. In 3 separate instances, the figure's pupils contracted and shifted. Not when the camera moved, but precisely when he leaned in closer to the monitor. It was impossible, but he felt watched. Not metaphorically, literally watched. There was a moment, he whispered. Just before the feed ended, the last frame, her face. He corrected himself. No, I can't call it her. That makes it too human. But the expression changed. A slight narrowing of the eyes, barely perceptible. But there, like a warning, or worse, like amusement. As if it knew he would keep watching, as if it wanted him to. The creature didn't blink, not once. He checked. He went through thousands of frames and realized the eyes never closed, which biologically would be impossible for anything organic. But this wasn't biological in the way we understand it. It was a kind of intelligence beyond anything he'd seen. And he'd worked on 2 Mars rover payloads and had access to the first infrared scans of Europa's subsurface anomalies. Nothing he'd studied, not even the weird biological signatures near Enceladus, compared to this. There was another detail. He almost didn't mention it. It felt too strange, too speculative. But he told it anyway. On the second viewing, the lighting seemed subtly different. The same corridor, the same metal walls, the same dim shadows cast from an unseen light source. But in the last few seconds, just as the video began to freeze and break apart, the shadow behind the humanoid figure stretched against the laws of physics. Not just longer, but against the geometry of the room, climbing angles where no light should have been, creeping like a web up the ceiling. And within that unnatural silhouette, another pair of eyes opened. He rubbed his forehead like the memory itself hurt. It didn't blink either, but that one didn't move at all, just stared, as if it wasn't supposed to be seen yet. He refused to say more about the second figure, but admitted that when he tried isolating that frame, his NASA terminal would shut down entirely. Not freeze, shut off. Instant black. 4 times. He started having dreams after that. Recurring, vivid dreams where he was back in that unlisted module. Except this time, he wasn't watching the video. He was inside it. No sound, no movement. Just him, floating weightless in a dark hallway of the ISS. And the figure on the wall slowly raising its head. The eyes always locked on him, never blinking, never speaking, but somehow conveying this overwhelming sense of anticipation. And then the worst part. There were other things in the room, he confessed. Shapes. I don't know how to explain them. They didn't have form like we do. They shimmered at the edge of visibility, like reflections on oil. But I knew they were there. I could feel them. They were watching the creature. Watching me. Or maybe watching through it. He speculated these things, these watchers, weren't bound to form or gravity or even time in the way we are. That the humanoid was simply a focus, a vessel for something older, deeper, something parasitic, not in the biological sense, but metaphysically. That's when he made a mistake. He took a screenshot, just one, a still frame of the creature's eyes, direct, focused, impossibly vivid. He emailed it to himself, planning to encrypt and hide it somewhere offline. But when he opened the image from his personal device at home, something was wrong. The eyes were no longer looking into the lens. They were looking off screen, to the right. He thought maybe it had always been that way, that maybe his memory was just flawed. But he knew it wasn't. He checked the timestamp, the angle, the metadata. It was the same frame. But the eyes had moved. They were tracking something else now. Not the viewer, something beside the viewer. He deleted it immediately. Factory reset the drive, even burned the USB he'd stored it on. But the next night, his bedroom smart light flickered. Exactly twice, then stayed on all night, even though it was set to auto off. He told himself it was a glitch, just a coincidence, but he couldn't sleep. And then came the knock. No one was at the door. No sound before or after. Just a soft knock, exactly like what you'd expect inside a sealed ISS module. Muffled, hollow, and impossibly distant. If you've been watching this closely, really paying attention, then you already know this wasn't just a body. It wasn't just a glitch. And whatever it is, it's still watching. Through cameras, screens, reflections, maybe even this one right now. If you've ever felt like your device was off, but something inside it wasn't. If you've ever had the sense that your webcam caught a flicker of movement just outside frame, tell me, did you look back? Let me know in the comments with one word, watched, if you understand what that means. He pauses again. You can hear his breath catching, like even remembering the footage costs him something. I shouldn't have watched the entire file, he whispers, but once you start, it's like something wants you to finish it. He says the transmission was timestamped to run exactly 4 hours and 18 minutes, uninterrupted. The file was corrupt in places, but not due to compression or signal decay. No, the breaks felt intentional. like something in the footage didn't want to be seen all at once. And what made it worse, what made it unbearable, was that nothing ever truly ended in those hours. He describes the same chamber from before, the dimly lit crawl space between modules, barely wider than a hallway. Still no movement from any crew, no radio chatter, no sense of time passing, until your eyes begin to adjust. The creature is still there, still slumped, strapped vertically against the metal, as if hung in place. But now its posture has shifted. Arms that were limp before have stiffened. The skin, previously dry and tight like preserved flesh, has begun to swell. There's movement, not sudden, not obvious. It's more like watching mold grow in reverse. Something dark rippling underneath the skin. Something that shouldn't be alive. Trying to remember how to be. The camera remains static, but the lighting subtly changes. Not from the station itself. The ambient LEDs remain constant, but from her. That's how he says it, trembling. Her light changed. He was certain the thing was dead, a husk. But suddenly, you could see condensation forming around the body, drops gathering near the jaw, the clavicle, the eyes. Something exhaling. Then comes the twitch, violent, jerking, as if every muscle inside her was trying to fire at once but not in sequence. The head snaps upward, spine cracking, mouth frozen open as if mid-scream. But there's no sound, not at first. The video continues. You're locked in. Not because you want to be, but because you can't stop. The timestamp moves. 8 minutes, then 22, then 50. The creature goes still again. Decay begins. Skin peels, darkens, shrinks against the bone. Fluids pool at the feet, and then, against all logic, all biology, all understanding, it reverses. The decomposition folds backward, like someone pressed rewind on entropy. Skin rehydrates, tissue inflates, hair begins to regrow in patches. Eyes, cloudy before, regain clarity. Not all at once, but enough to make it obvious. She's not dying. She's cycling. He says this loop repeated at least 6 times during the 4-hour recording. Each time, slightly different. A new twitch, a new gesture. The mouth opens wider. The fingers claw more aggressively. The neck cracks at a sharper angle. By the 4th cycle, she begins to look straight into the camera. Not toward it, into it. You get the feeling she's not just seeing. She's registering, studying, remembering. And then, something even worse happens. At exactly 2 hours and 34 minutes, a sound cuts in. It's not a voice, not in any traditional sense. It's low, granular. A subharmonic murmur that doesn't play through your speakers. It vibrates in your ribcage, like it's using your bones as antennae. The file logs marked it as low-frequency anomaly. Not speech, but something repeating in rhythmic intervals, almost like breathing. He said the technicians who first listened to it had panic responses within minutes. One threw up. Another had to be sedated. They tried running a spectral analysis on the waveform, but when they played it back through a filtered channel, the room went silent, and the lights in the lab dimmed. Some believed it was just coincidence, a power fluctuation, but he insists the sound knew. It wasn't meant to be heard, but the file didn't care. It played anyway. That phrase stuck with him. It played anyway, like the recording had its own will. He said he played that audio again, alone, with noise-canceling headphones. Something inside him changed after that. Not mentally, biologically. He began experiencing blackouts, night sweats, heart arrhythmias during rest, but the doctors could find nothing conclusive. The sound nested in me, he whispered. It didn't want to be understood. It wanted to be felt. The image drags that direction. Then she shifts to the right. and the static pulls with her, as if reality just in that corridor was bending toward her motion. He said her skin began to show tiny lesions, symbols maybe, like branded flesh. But every time you tried to freeze the frame, they blurred. Not from resolution loss, from resistance. She didn't want to be paused. She had stabilized. Her body was whole again, but this time, she was no longer strapped to the wall. The harness was still visible, but her posture had changed. She was upright, not hanging, standing, fully. Her eyes didn't blink, her mouth never closed, but her chest rose and fell, in rhythm with the low hum that still played beneath everything. The frame began to shake, as if the ISS itself, the camera mount, the walls, the air, were vibrating under pressure. He swears, and he's adamant here, that for a split second, the camera caught her outside the harness, like she stepped forward. Just one frame, a glitch, maybe, or a warning. Because when the image corrected, she was back in place. Same posture, same dead stare. But something in the angle had changed. She was closer, not by much, but enough to make it feel deliberate. And just when you think your brain has hit its threshold, when you can't process another second, the recording ends. Abruptly, no fade out, no system message, just black, like it never existed. He tried to replay it again the next day. The file was gone, not corrupted, not misplaced, deleted. Every trace scrubbed from the drive. Even backup sectors had been overwritten with zeroed out binaries. But the sound stayed with him. He said he sometimes hears it through walls, through dreams, through moments of silence when no machines are running. And sometimes, if he listens hard enough, he swears he can hear her breathing back. The footage was supposed to be gone, erased, purged from every server, every backup, every trace of digital existence. And for most people, it was. The glitch had been handled. The file scrubbed from the NASA intranet within minutes of being flagged. But not before a handful of eyes, just a handful, had seen it. And not before one of them, someone the narrator simply calls L, had copied it. Not to his personal device, that would have been traceable, but to a cold external node wired directly into an unused diagnostic port. A trick no one born after 1980 would even think to use. And that copy somehow survived. He doesn't say how he got it, only that L trusted him. Trusted him because at one point they were both part of something called Orpheus Echo. That's not in any public database, not in NASA's archives, not even whispered in declassified documents. But it was real, a small unit buried under layers of bureaucracy, formed after STS-80 back in the 90s, when the shuttle Columbia filmed something. A shape. Moving against a backdrop of space, too large to be debris, too steady to be a glitch. Echo's mission was simple. If anything outside standard parameters appeared in Earth orbit, it didn't get studied. It got buried. That's what they did. They buried it. Which is why when L sent him the file from the 2015 glitch, he knew exactly what he was looking at, not the image itself. That came later. No, what he saw first was metadata, file structure, header anomalies. The timecode alone was impossible. 4 hours, 13 minutes, and 26 seconds of uninterrupted footage from a source that, officially, didn't exist. From a camera that wasn't mapped, inside a room that wasn't documented, on a station where every inch is accounted for. He opens the file. And this is where his voice gets quieter. Not shaky, not dramatic, just quiet. Like he's remembering something his brain doesn't want to recall. He says the room in the footage didn't look like the rest of the ISS. It was narrow, cramped, bolted panels, no handrails, just hard, cold metal. The lighting flickered every few minutes like it hadn't been serviced in years. and near the back of the chamber, wedged against the wall, was the shape. At first glance, it looked like a pressure suit. Torn, collapsed. Like maybe someone left it behind during early assembly, but then the shadows moved. The camera refocused, and what he saw wasn't fabric. It was skin, dried, wrinkled, gray, but worse than that. It was intact, no breach, no helmet, no oxygen supply, and yet the body hadn't decomposed. Not the way it should in that environment. It had dried out, yes, but it hadn't rotted. It hadn't bloated or frozen or disintegrated. It just remained. And the face. God, the face. He describes it with the detachment of a man trying not to relive a nightmare. The eyes were open, glossy, still moist, still reflecting light. There was no mouth, just a crease, like it had once been able to form one but hadn't needed it for a very, very long time. He says the expression wasn't of pain or fear or even death. It was expectation, like it had been waiting, not for help, but to be seen. He pauses when he says this. You can almost hear him turning away from the mic, collecting himself. And then he adds something that wasn't in the file, something he only found out after. The person who originally recorded it, the astronaut codenamed MJ, was officially listed as having died 2 weeks after the glitch. The cause? Suit breach during EVA, a routine spacewalk that ended in tragedy. Only the manifest showed no scheduled EVA that day. And more importantly, the external cameras, publicly archived and time-stamped, showed no one exiting the station at all. It was staged. Every detail, down to the obituary NASA quietly issued to media partners. A clean narrative handed to the press, never questioned. But there's one more layer, the part that chilled him most. MJ had sent a voice memo to his sister 3 days before his supposed death. A short one, only 12 seconds. It said, "If they say I died outside, it's a lie. I saw it. It saw me back. I think it's still here." That message was deleted hours later from her inbox, but she had already saved it. The narrator only found out because she contacted him directly. Not through email, not a call. She left a physical letter taped to the windshield of his parked car. No return address, no name, just the flash drive and a note. "I don't know who you are, but you were mentioned in my brother's journals. He said you'd understand." And he did. He always knew something was wrong with the official story, but hearing that voice, hearing MJ sound so calm and certain, confirmed it. They didn't just delete data, they rewrote it. Fabricated EVA logs, forged telemetry, reassigned camera indexes to make it seem like the module didn't exist. And when the engineers in Houston started asking questions, when the techs in mission control noticed that the camera system had pulled power from a source that wasn't on any of the ISS blueprints, those engineers were reassigned, quietly. Some were let go. A few, according to him, simply vanished. He names one of them, Dr. Kayla Ritchie, electrical systems lead for the ISS power matrix in 2015. She'd spent 3 years mapping load balances across all external modules. And then, just weeks after the glitch, she went on medical leave and never came back. No press release, no explanation. Her LinkedIn profile frozen. Her university affiliation removed from their website. Like she was unpersoned. That's not paranoia, that's protocol. It all ties back to Orpheus Echo. Their job wasn't to destroy evidence, it was to contain it, to isolate the data, reroute it, bury it beneath layers of noise. The best way to hide something is to leave a trace so absurd, so fragmented, that even if someone does stumble onto it, they'll assume it's just a glitch. But there's one final thread, one detail he didn't want to include. But now, he says, he has to. because it proves the creature, or whatever that thing was never alone. As the 4-hour video nears its final minutes, the camera auto-adjusts, some sort of low-light calibration. The shadows shift, and for a split second, less than a second really, he says you can see movement behind the figure, not from the body, from the wall itself, a ripple, as if the metal isn't solid, as if it breathes. That was the moment he stopped the file. He never watched the end. He didn't answer immediately. He just sat there, silent, like he was trying to remember how to breathe. His hands were trembling again, but not like before. This wasn't just age or illness. It was something else, like the weight of what he was about to say was pressing down on every part of him. When he finally spoke, his voice cracked mid-sentence, like even his throat was resisting the memory. "Humanoid," he whispered. "But older, not ancient, no, pre-human." My brain tried to fill in the blanks with logic, with science. Was it a primate? A mutated astronaut? Something from Earth's distant past that somehow made its way to low orbit? But he shook his head slowly, as if he could hear my thoughts spiraling into safer territory. "No," he said, firmer this time. "Not from here, not from any when we know." The kind of awe that borders on religious. He told me that during the early phases of the ISS-Black channel program, long before the public even knew what the ISS was, there were internal NASA documents, purely theoretical, that referenced bioforms. They weren't described as aliens. That word didn't appear once. Instead, the language was more clinical, but still unsettling. Orbital organisms, spontaneous aerial life, bioentities of unknown origin, orbitally bound. According to him, the theory was simple and terrifying. Life didn't begin on Earth. Not exactly. It started out there, in the cold vacuum just beyond the reach of our clouds. And sometimes, under the right cosmic conditions, something lingers, evolves, waits. He said that some scientists believe the early building blocks of life, amino acids, organic molecules, weren't brought to Earth by comets or asteroids like the textbooks say. They were born in orbit, fed by solar radiation, forged in the silence. Some even theorized that consciousness itself might have originated from these orbital bioforms. That awareness didn't evolve up from the ground, but rained down from above. It wasn't mainstream science, not even fringe. These were whispers buried in classified memos, buried deeper under funding reports and black budget programs. But they fascinated him, and when he saw that creature, the one fused to the ISS wall, its skin folded and blistered like dried leather, its eyes somehow alert, he knew. This wasn't something that climbed out of a Russian lab or drifted through a breach in protocol. This thing had always been there. Always. He said something else too, and I'll never forget how he said it, like it hurt to form the words. "I don't think it died up there. I think it was placed." He explained that when the glitch happened in 2015, when MJ accidentally transmitted the footage, there were details no one was supposed to notice. Tiny ones, subtle. Like the way the creature's body was perfectly aligned with the curvature of the module wall, as if it had been set there intentionally, not floating, not drifting, secured. But here's the part that stayed with me, that I still can't shake even now. The metal surrounding the body wasn't the same material as the ISS. The alloy was older, rougher, visibly oxidized. It didn't match any construction phase of the station. That section of the footage, the part where the camera panned close to the joint seams, only lasted 2 seconds before the feed cut. But that was enough. He ran a materials comparison from his personal workstation before they locked him out. The results came back flagged in red. Non-correlating fabrication signature. Unknown origin, no match found. Either someone, at some point, retrofitted part of the ISS with alien material and never told anyone. Or, and this is what he truly believed, The station wasn't entirely ours to begin with. Maybe the ISS was built over something, around something. Maybe part of its structure was never designed by human hands. And maybe, just maybe, that thing was never alone in there. He started shaking harder at this point. His voice kept catching like he was choking on dry air. They told us the module was Russian, said it was a prototype that got scrapped mid-phase. But it had no power draw, no crew logs, no tether points, no way in or out. Just a sealed door and cameras with no IDs. Someone saw it. Someone who didn't come back the same. The thing that truly scared him, the thing that still kept him awake even after all these years, wasn't just the creature itself, or the fact that it seemed to be alive. It was that no one questioned its presence. The higher-ups at NASA, the mission commanders, the chain of command, they didn't panic. They didn't initiate containment or alert the UN or scramble press control. They simply erased, like it was routine, like they'd seen it before. He paused again, his voice barely above a whisper now. I think there's more than one. It kept showing up in engineers' notes, filed way below clearance levels. They called it echo form, as if this species or intelligence existed before time had solidified into the rhythm we know. Before gravity held meaning, before death had rules. And if what he said next was true, then everything we've been told about human evolution, about our place in the universe, might be nothing but well-intentioned fiction. There's a reason they don't let that room stay visible in the schematics. And it's not just because of what's inside, something that might have come before us, not from the stars, but from the silence between them. If anything about this is real, and God help us if it is, then the word alien doesn't mean what we think it does. Maybe it never did. If this is resonating with you, comment the words, Echoform doesn't forget. Let's see who else understands what that means. He told me the ISS-Black frequency never stopped transmitting. Even after the footage was buried, after the reclassification, after MJ was pronounced dead in a press release that no one questioned. That black channel, it kept going. Quiet, hidden, humming underneath the noise of normal operations. The ex-engineer didn't know exactly who still monitored it. He said it slipped into the hands of the inheritors, whatever that meant, but it wasn't American. Not anymore. He believed the signal was picked up by equipment that hadn't been used since the Cold War. Tech from an age when paranoia justified any experiment. Soviet ground dishes, analog relics, forgotten stations buried in forests and abandoned tundras, antennas too old for digital warfare, but perfect for listening to ghosts. He said he didn't find this out through NASA. He found it through a man he only referred to as Pavel, a ham radio operator from Petrozavodsk, who had, in 2019, posted a blurry screenshot on a Russian space forum. It showed what looked like part of the ISS interior, but the lighting was wrong. The timestamp was recent, the angle unfamiliar. What stood out wasn't the image itself, but the eyes. In the upper left corner, in the shadows, were those same glossy, open eyes that haunted the footage from 2015. They hadn't closed, they hadn't moved, but they were still there. Pavel's post was flooded with replies within minutes. Dozens of users asked where he got the signal, what antenna, what frequency. Some begged for a download. Others warned him. Not like trolls or skeptics, but like people who knew. One reply said, "Delete it, or she'll find your camera." Another simply said, "You've seen it, that's enough." 2 days later, Pavel deleted his entire account. A few users claimed to have spoken to him privately. One even posted an MP3 file, 6 seconds of static, followed by a whisper. It wasn't Russian. It wasn't any language. Just a low, wet hiss. And then silence. That user vanished a week later. The ex-engineer kept his voice steady when he recounted all this, but there was a tremor behind his words. He said there's a pattern, one you don't notice until it's too late. He showed me a list of usernames, all linked to archived posts about the ISS-Black channel. Most of them were from obscure forums, cosmonaut legacy sites, space weather trackers, even a few conspiracy boards. Nearly every one of them had stopped posting within 2 months of sharing anything related to that stream. No official warnings, no bans. Just silence. As if their lives had suddenly shifted in a direction that didn't allow for logging back in. He believed the channel itself is a trap, not metaphorically, literally. A psychic signal. Something built into the waveform, not in the video, not in the images, but in the transmission itself. He called it an echo effect. He said certain frequencies can carry emotional residues. Fear, in particular, embeds deeply into analog. The older the tech, the more potent the recording becomes. That's why digital copies degrade the horror. But if you listen through the original path, if you hear the raw signal from the old dishes, you don't just see the thing on the wall. You feel it. You invite it. Not because it wants you to, but because it needs you to. He told me about a base in Siberia that was supposedly reactivated in 2021. A low-profile site with no satellite footprint and no modern infrastructure. The only reason he knew it existed was because Pavel had mentioned it once. Kursk Array 9. After that name appeared, 3 separate accounts tried to triangulate its location. None were successful. But one of them, a Belarusian technician, claimed he got close. He said he camped within 10 kilometers of the supposed site and picked up the frequency on a modified shortwave receiver. What he heard wasn't static. It was the same whispering loop from the 2015 file. Only this time, it was layered with breathing. Slow, rhythmic, human, but not. He left the forest the same night. And that was the last message he ever posted. The narrator paused when he got to this part. I could hear him breathing through the recorder. Not shaky, just slow. Deliberate, like he was measuring every word before he let it out. Then he said something that didn't make sense to me at first. You don't watch her. She watches you watching her. I asked what he meant. He explained that once the footage was seen through the proper channel, the connection was permanent. The observer becomes a reference point, a fixed location in her memory. The camera stops being a passive lens. It becomes a beacon, a flare, a return address. I wanted to dismiss it. I wanted to say it sounded like superstition. Like the ramblings of a man too deep in government secrets, too burdened by guilt or madness. But then he played me a voicemail. It was from his niece. She lived 3 states away, had nothing to do with NASA, knew nothing about the ISS. The voicemail was from 2:43 a.m. Her voice was hushed, trembling. Uncle, I don't know what's going on. I swear I saw a woman in my hallway just now. I thought it was a dream, but then the smoke detector light went red. There's no smoke. I'm scared. Please call me back. The man then turned off the recorder. Just for a second. Then he turned it back on again and whispered, "She doesn't want to be remembered, but she doesn't want to be forgotten either." I asked him what that meant. He didn't answer. What he did say was this: there are still people tuning in. Somewhere out there, someone's always listening. They think they're decoding a signal, but it's not a message, it's a mirror. And the longer they stare, the more of themselves they lose. There's a moment in the recording, just before it cuts, that still haunts me. I didn't mention it before because I wasn't sure it really happened. But I saw her blink. Not a glitch, not a flicker. A conscious, deliberate blink, like she knew she was being watched again. And when I paused the footage, zoomed in, enhanced every frame, it wasn't just her eyes following the camera. It was her entire face, subtly shifting toward the lens, as if she could see through it, as if the camera wasn't a barrier, but a window. I told myself it was psychological, that the stress, the illness, the guilt, it was catching up to me. I was a dying man grasping at shadows. But then, I watched the file a second time. That was my mistake. The first time, I was curious, detached. The second time I felt something looking back, and not from the screen, behind me, like the act of observing her had opened something, or worse, invited her in. I live alone, no pets, no family, no movement in the house I don't create. But 3 nights after that second viewing, I woke up at exactly 3:11 a.m. No alarm, no sound, just this cold heaviness in the room. I reached for my phone, and there it was, a notification from my hallway security camera. Motion detected. The image it captured is blurry, grainy, distorted. But I know what I saw. A tall, emaciated figure, her outline warped by the fisheye lens, but unmistakable. And the eyes. The same eyes from the ISS footage, locked on the lens, like she was waiting for me to check it. I stared at that still frame for hours, zoomed, inverted the contrast, ran it through filters, but no matter what I did, she stayed clear, stable, unpixelated. That shouldn't be possible. Security cameras don't pick up that level of detail, especially in low light. And yet, there she was, crisp and present. I deleted the file, disconnected the camera, threw it in the trash, and for a while, it helped. No more notifications, no more images. I tried to sleep again, tried to forget, but 2 weeks later, I noticed something else. Reflections, in windows, in the microwave, the stainless steel door of the refrigerator, shapes standing still where no one stood, shadows cast by nothing. She was back. Not every night, not even consistently, but just enough to make me dread the dark. Just enough that I leave the lights on now, not out of superstition, but because I know she doesn't like the light. I say that like it's a fact, and it feels like one. Because on the nights she appears, every bulb in the house flickers, not off, just unstable. Like she's close enough to disrupt the electricity but still outside, waiting, watching, testing. Last Thursday, I did something reckless. I reconnected the hallway camera, just for one night. I needed to know if it was getting worse, if she was closer, if maybe, just maybe, I imagined the whole thing. The app gave me 5 motion alerts between 2:00 and 4:00 a.m. The first 4 were blank. No visible movement, just faint distortion. But the 5th, she was inside, standing halfway up the stairs, closer than ever. And this time, her mouth was open, not screaming, just wide, like she was breathing through it or mouthing something. I turned up the volume, thinking maybe I'd catch some audio interference. There was no sound, just that same low-frequency hum from the ISS file, the one that vibrates in your spine instead of your ears. But underneath that hum, a shape in the waveform. Not noise, not static. It looked like a pattern, a rhythm. I sent the file to a friend who works with audio spectrography. I told him it was from an experimental short film. I just needed an analysis. The next day, he called me. He sounded off, quiet, like he was in shock. He said, "It's not music, it's not language either, but it's intentional. You didn't make this. Where did you get it?" I told him it was better he didn't know. We haven't spoken since. Here's the part I haven't told anyone, not even the researchers I contacted anonymously. Sometimes I feel her breath, like the room temperature drops, but only near my face. It doesn't feel like wind. It feels like someone exhaling on my cheek from an inch away, like she's already broken through, like she's already inside. I tried smudging the house, crosses, salt lines, anything I could find online. None of it worked, none of it even slowed her down. Last night, I checked the door camera again. There was no notification, no alert, but something was different. The timestamp on the footage was frozen. For 17 minutes, the clock didn't move, but the image changed, subtly, like someone was standing just outside the frame. And then, at the very edge, for a split second, just a single frame, her hand brushed against the door. A hand that looked wrong. Too many joints. The skin stretched like old rubber, fingernails black and cracked, and something scribbled in blood across her fingers. I enhanced it. It looked like numbers, coordinates maybe, or a date. I haven't deciphered it yet. But I will, because something tells me this is a countdown, not just for me, but for anyone who's seen her, anyone who's listened to that sound, anyone who has come too close to the black channel frequency, that loop of death from the ISS. It didn't end there. It followed us home. It's replicating itself in signals, cameras, reflections, and once you become aware of it, it becomes aware of you. You don't need to believe me. In fact, I hope you don't. But if you've been hearing static in your walls, if your motion sensors go off with no one there, if you've ever paused a video and felt like something was staring back, don't watch it again. And if you see her on your camera, please, don't turn around. If you made it this far, maybe you felt it too. That pressure in your chest, that chill on your neck, that whisper your ears can't quite catch, but your body reacts to anyway. If something stirred in you while watching, if something followed you through this story, then you're exactly who this channel was made for. So don't just walk away like nothing happened. Subscribe now if you felt anything, even a flicker of recognition, especially if part of you wants to deny it. That means it's already looking back. This isn't just a story, it's a signal. Drop a like if your heartbeat changed at any point, if you paused to look over your shoulder, or if you almost didn't want to finish watching, but did anyway. And one more thing. Comment below. She looked through me. If you felt that presence, if those eyes reached you through the screen, this is how we find each other, how we know who's been marked. And whatever you do, don't stop here. The next transmission is already waiting. You'll see it right there on the screen. Click it. Watch it now. Because the longer you wait, the closer she gets.